You know, usually when we think about taking a language test, there is this very specific, almost universal feeling of dread that just washes over you.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very real anxiety.
Right. Like you picture sitting at this tiny wobbly desk, sweating over a piece of paper, and just trying to remember some obscure grammar rule you learned 3 years ago.
All while a clock is ticking loudly on the wall.
Yes, exactly. And the entire experience just feels, well, completely disconnected from the reality of actually speaking to another human being.
Because it's so binary. I mean, you either know the proper past participle conjugation or you don't. The traditional testing environment just strips away all that messy, unpredictable context.
The context that actually defines how we communicate.
Exactly. Real life doesn't happen on a multiple choice sheet.
Which is exactly why the framework we're looking at today flips that entire concept completely upside down. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today we are extracting the hidden rules of everyday human interaction.
And we are pulling them from a pretty fascinating source.
Yeah, we're looking at an interactive 5-minute English conversation challenge script created by Emma and Jack. And the mission here for this deep dive isn't to give you an English lesson, or to tell you to memorize syntax.
No, not at all.
Our goal is to uncover the underlying mechanics of navigating the real-world friction you face every single day. And that applies whether you are speaking a second language or, honestly, your native tongue.
I love that we're doing this because Emma and Jack's approach completely shifts the paradigm of what assessing language skills is supposed to look like.
Yeah, it's very different.
It is. We are moving entirely away from that sterile environment of syntax and stepping firmly into the realm of pragmatics.
And for anyone who might not be familiar with the exact term, pragmatics is basically...
It's simply the study of how language is actually used in a real living context. It's the difference between knowing the dictionary definition of a word and knowing how that word makes the person standing in front of you feel.
I was looking at how they structured this, and it feels less like an exam and much more like a social flight simulator.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. They aren't asking you to fill in blanks. They're throwing you into these out loud, high-pressure communication scenarios. You're supposed to press pause, speak your answer into the empty void of your room, and just see how you handle the pressure.
Which is terrifying for a lot of people.
It is, but there's this one detail in their scoring system that absolutely blew my mind. So they give you 20 points for a full, natural answer.
Makes sense.
But if you completely panic, your mind goes blank, and you just freeze up entirely, they still give you 5 points.
I really love that detail.
Why is that? I mean, a blank stare isn't exactly good communication.
Well, no, but it acknowledges a fundamental truth of human psychology. In real life, freezing up is a completely valid, albeit unhelpful, biological response.
It's that fight, flight, or freeze reaction.
Exactly. Your brain is overwhelmed by the cognitive load of the situation, and it simply stalls. By rewarding even the panic, the test is evaluating your spontaneous reaction over perfect textbook accuracy.
Ah, I see.
Because think about it, having an encyclopedic vocabulary is entirely useless if you can't access those words when, say, a frustrated barista is staring you down during the morning rush.
Spot on. So if you're looking at this as a social flight simulator, before you can navigate complex turbulence, you had to actually get the plane off the ground.
You have to initiate contact.
Exactly. And the very first scenario they throw at you is the most universal social situation on the planet. Introducing yourself to a room full of strangers.
Which is the foundational building block of literally any relationship, personal or professional.
Yeah.
Yet, paradoxically, it's the exact moment where people tend to stumble the most.
Because the stakes feel so high, right? You want to make a good first impression. So the scenario they give is that you just started a new class and the teacher asks you to introduce yourself.
Standard icebreaker stuff.
Right. And they provide an example of what they consider the perfect answer. We meet this woman named Maria, and she gives a quick rundown. She says she's from Sao Paulo, she works as a graphic designer, and she taught herself to play the guitar during lockdown.
Okay, a nice, solid introduction.
But, and here's the thing, I note the source material places a massive emphasis on how she finishes. She doesn't just stop after the guitar fact.
Right, she adds something else.
Yeah, she makes a point to add, with genuine energy, that she's really excited to be there. And looking at the breakdown, it seems like the first 4 details, name, origin, job, hobby, those are just data.
Yes.
But that final element, the enthusiasm, that feels like the actual anchor of the entire introduction.
You've hit on the exact mechanism that makes this work. If we look at the pragmatics of a first impression, we have to ask, why does that enthusiasm matter so much?
Why does it?
Well, If you simply list those 4 data points, you are effectively reading a verbal resume aloud to the room. It is a cold, highly transactional exchange of biographical information.
It's just facts.
Exactly. It doesn't give the listener anything to grab onto emotionally.
It sounds a bit like an android trying to blend in, like, I am human. I do art. I play strings.
That is a remarkably accurate way to describe how that flat delivery lands on the human ear. Evolutionarily speaking, when a new person enters our environment, our brains are subconsciously scanning them.
Trying to figure out if they're a threat.
Right, a threat or an ally. And a flat, emotionless delivery keeps people's social guards up. We don't know how to read them.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
But by adding that final note of enthusiasm, explicitly stating, I'm really excited to be here, you are transforming a sterile list of facts into a warm, active invitation for connection.
You're signaling approachability.
Yes, you're showing a vulnerability and a confidence that immediately lowers the defensive barriers of everyone else in the room.
So Maria becomes memorable not because she can play the guitar, but because her enthusiasm fundamentally altered the emotional temperature of the room.
Precisely. It's the stark difference between merely transmitting information and actually communicating.
Wow. Okay, but connection is fragile. So you've successfully opened the door with a warm intro, the room likes you, things are going well. The true test of your pragmatics, however, is what happens when the universe immediately introduces friction.
The transition from planned pleasantries to unexpected awkwardness. This is where the social flight simulator hits its first patch of real turbulence.
Exactly. And the scenario Emma and Jack use for this is brilliant because it happens to all of us. You're at a cafe, you ordered the black coffee, but the waiter drops a latte with milk right in front of you.
A classic mix-up.
Now, I have to admit, when I read their ideal response to this situation, I had a very strong reaction.
Oh, really? What was it?
Well, their perfect answer involves saying, "Excuse me, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I think there might be a small mix-up. Could you possibly swap it? I'm so sorry, thank you so much."
That's a lot of apologizing.
It is. I'm looking at this and thinking, why on earth am I apologizing? I'm the paying customer. I ordered black coffee. They brought me milk.
It feels backwards.
Yeah. Is this intense level of apologizing, saying, "I'm so sorry to bother you"? Is that strictly a cultural quirk of like British or American hyper-politeness? Or is there a deeper psychological strategy I'm missing here?
It is a completely understandable reaction to feel defensive of your position as the customer. I mean, the instinct is to just say, hey, you got this wrong.
Right. Fix it.
But if we peel back the layers of that hyper-polite response, the source explicitly points out the deliberate avoidance of the phrase, you made a mistake.
Okay, so it's intentional.
Highly intentional. There is a much deeper, highly calculated strategy at play here that goes far beyond cultural etiquette. This is a masterclass in strategic de-escalation.
Walk me through the mechanics of that, because my immediate instinct is still that apologizing for their mistake puts me in a subservient position.
It feels subservient, sure, but it is actually about maintaining control of the outcome.
Oh, so?
Consider the psychology of a service worker, or really anyone, when they are confronted with a direct accusation. If you say, you gave me the wrong coffee, or you made a mistake, you are triggering their amygdala.
Their threat response.
Exactly. Their immediate instinctual threat response activates. Their stress levels spike, they feel embarrassed, or they feel cornered. And when people feel cornered, what do?
They get defensive.
Right. They become defensive, and the interaction immediately turns adversarial.
So by keeping the language neutral, calling it a small mix-up, you're preventing that defensive wall from coming up in the first place.
Yes, you are completely removing the social friction. By softening the entry with an apology and framing the situation as a mutual mystery like, oh, there seems to be a mix-up, you take the target entirely off their back.
We have a mystery on our hands, let's solve it together.
Exactly. You aren't pointing a finger, you are standing shoulder to shoulder with them, looking at this mysterious wrong coffee together.
And then you end with gratitude.
Right, and suddenly, the waiter isn't a combatant you have to defeat. They are an ally who is going to help you solve this problem.
That's fascinating.
The irony is that by surrendering a tiny piece of your ego and adopting that hyper-polite stance, you actually assert immense control over the situation. You get your black coffee much faster, with zero residual awkwardness or spit in your cup.
Okay, I see it now. You aren't apologizing because you genuinely believe you're at fault. You're weaponizing the apology as a social lubricant to grease the wheels of getting exactly what you want.
It's incredibly tactical.
It really is. But let's be real. De-escalating a barista over a latte is relatively low stakes.
True.
Sometimes you can't just soften the edges and apologize your way out of a situation.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to step up, hold your ground, and firmly own your space in the conversation.
Yes, the stakes inevitably get higher. We move from minor, easily solvable corrections into much more complex territory, like defending a personal viewpoint or reporting a systemic failure where you need immediate action.
Let's look at how the source handles defending a viewpoint first. They ask for an opinion on a very polarizing topic. Is social media mostly good or mostly bad for society?
Always a heated debate.
Oh, yeah. And the perfect answer they provide is brilliantly balanced. The speaker refers to it as a double-edged sword. They acknowledge the positive aspect of instant global connection, but then they immediately counterweight that by citing mental health concerns.
It's a very measured response.
Yeah, they even drop in a personal detail about limiting their own screen time to 1 hour a day.
The nuance of the opinion is interesting, but if we look at the underlying architecture of that answer, the actual opinion about social media is almost irrelevant to why it succeeds as a piece of communication.
Wait, really? I assumed the balance of the argument was the entire point. What is the core skill actually being tested here?
The core skill is structural signposting and conversational generosity.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Sure. The source specifically highlights the use of phrases like honestly and pivoting with I do think and grounding it with personally.
Right, those little filler phrases.
They aren't just filler, though. When you are delivering a complex thought, those phrases act as auditory signposts for the listener. They signal that you are structuring a reasoned argument, not just rambling emotionally.
Oh, that makes sense. It guides the listener through your thought process.
Exactly. But the absolute masterstroke of the answer is how it concludes. It doesn't just trail off or end with a definitive statement of fact. It ends with a pivot. What do you think?
It's passing the conversational ball back over the net.
Precisely. Asking that question at the end is what pulls the other person into your orbit. It transforms what could have easily been a rigid, dogmatic monologue into a fluid, two-sided exchange.
Because nobody likes being lectured at.
Right. It demonstrates that you aren't just broadcasting your worldview to a captive audience. You are actively interested in a dialogue. True mastery of owning your conversational space isn't about dominating the airtime.
It's about confidently holding the floor, delivering your point with structure, and then gracefully inviting someone else to step onto that floor with you.
You nailed it.
That makes a lot of sense. You are managing the flow of the interaction rather than just taking up oxygen. Now, the next scenario takes owning your space in a slightly different, much more urgent direction.
The broken heater scenario.
Yes. You aren't giving a philosophical opinion here. You're describing a critical problem while under significant duress. The setup is that you're calling an English-speaking landlord. The heater in your apartment is completely broken, it is the middle of winter, and you are freezing.
A classic high-stress, low-comfort scenario, which is exactly where our worst communication habits usually surface.
Exactly. So the perfect answer Emma and Jack outlined goes like this. Hi there, this is Alex calling from apartment 4B. The heating stopped working yesterday evening around 6 p.m. I've tried turning it off and on again, but nothing is happening. It's getting quite cold. Is there anything that can be done soon?
It's a great response.
When I read this, my brain immediately clicked into my previous life of dealing with corporate computer issues. This response is the exact structural equivalent of filing the perfect IT support ticket.
I think that analogy perfectly captures the mechanics at play. Break down why that structure is so effective.
Think about what happens when your work computer crashes. If you send an angry, panicked email to the IT department that just says, my computer's broken, fix it now, you haven't actually helped them.
No, you've just given them a headache.
Right. They have to send 5 emails back just to figure out what department you're in, what operating system you're using, what the error message says. You're wasting precious time because you communicated your panic, not your problem.
And under pressure, that's what most people do. They communicate the panic.
Exactly. But Alex in apartment 4B completely avoids that trap. Alex gives the exact who apartment 4B, the precise what broken heater, the specific when started at 6 p.m. yesterday, and most importantly, the troubleshooting steps already attempted, turned it off and on again.
That final element stating the attempted fix is vital. We really need to talk about the concept of cognitive load here.
Oh, cognitive load. I like that. What do you mean by that in this context?
When you call someone in a panic, the person on the other end of the line is suddenly hit with a massive cognitive burden. They have to process your emotional state, calm you down, figure out the context of the situation, and then try to formulate a solution.
That's a lot to process all at once.
It is. But by formatting your complaint with that rigorous IT ticket structure, the who, what, when, and the attempted fix, you completely bypass the emotional noise. You reduce the landlord's cognitive load to almost zero.
You're handing them a fully assembled diagnostic package on a silver platter.
Yes. And by preemptively stating that you already tried turning it off and on again, you eliminate their immediate reflex to ask the most obvious, frustrating, troubleshooting question.
Did you try unplugging it?
Exactly. It allows the landlord to instantly bypass the investigation phase and shift directly into the execution phase.
Which gets your heat fixed faster.
Right. In real life, providing this kind of structured, chronologically sound timeline while your body's physically shivering and your stress levels are high, that is an incredibly advanced communication skill.
It proves you can compartmentalize your physical discomfort to achieve a practical result. Structure prevents panic.
Well said.
I think that is a lesson that applies far beyond just learning a language.
Yeah.
So we've navigated quite a social gauntlet here. We've initiated contact with warmth. We've tactically de-escalated a conflict over a coffee order. We've held our ground in a debate. And we've successfully managed cognitive load to get our heater fixed.
But there's one final hurdle.
Right. Every interaction eventually reaches its natural conclusion. You actually have to leave the conversation. How do you disengage without making it weird?
The graceful exit. I have to admit, this is the area where I personally struggle the most.
Really?
Oh, absolutely. The temptation to just pull an Irish goodbye and fade into the background is always incredibly strong because exiting a conversation directly can feel inherently awkward.
It is the most jarring part of any interaction. You just wait for a tiny lull in the conversation and throw out this awkward, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go now. Die, and then you just turn and walk away.
It's painful.
But the source material provides an ideal exit that is so incredibly smooth. It goes, oh, wow, I just noticed the time. I really have to get going. This has been lovely. Let's grab coffee next week. I'll text you. Bye.
It's a very elegant sequence.
It is. And the element that the source places the highest value on in that sequence is what they call the next step. Specifically the phrase, I'll text you.
That simple phrase is the psychological anchor of the entire exit strategy.
Why is that one phrase so important?
We have to remember that humans are deeply social creatures, and we are hardwired to perceive sudden social disconnection as a threat. When you just say, I have to go, bye, and abruptly sever the connection, it can subconsciously trigger a fear of social rejection in the other person.
Even if you don't intend it that way at all.
Right, even if you're just genuinely late for a meeting.
It feels like the door is being slammed in their face rather than gently closed.
Exactly. But by providing a concrete next step, saying, let's grab coffee, I'll text you, you are offering profound psychological reassurance. You are signaling that the termination of this specific, immediate conversation is not a termination of the overarching relationship.
You're building a bridge to the future.
Yes. It validates the time you just spent together, making the ending feel complete and warm rather than abrupt and dismissive.
It's leaving a breadcrumb trail for the relationship to follow later.
I love that.
Now, as we wrap up how this whole system works, Emma and Jack tie all 5 of these scenarios into a final scoring metric.
The self-evaluation phase.
Right. Each challenge is worth 20 points, leading to a maximum score of 100. They have different tiers. Below 30 makes you a beginner, while hitting the 90 to 100 range means you are advanced, operating fluently and naturally.
But you know, the true genius of their scoring system isn't the final number you arrive at. Not at all. Because you're practicing alone in your room, the entire system relies completely on honest self-evaluation. You have to be the ruthless judge of your own hesitations, your own panicked stumbles, and your own clarity.
It acts as a mirror, not a grade.
Exactly. And the underlying metric for success across all those tiers isn't whether your grammar was flawless. The true test is whether you possess the ability to maintain the forward momentum of human connection, even when the situation gets messy.
So, when we look at the big picture of this deep dive, what does this all mean for you listening right now? We started this journey looking at a simple 5-minute English conversation challenge, but we've uncovered a much more profound operating manual for human interaction.
It really is an operating manual.
Right, because whether you're attempting to speak a brand new language or you are operating in your native tongue, effective communication rests on a few immovable pillars. It requires the structure to manage cognitive load, like we saw with the broken heater. It requires the strategic empathy to de-escalate friction, like the cafe mix-up. And it requires the psychological awareness to provide clear next steps so you can exit a room without triggering someone's fear of rejection.
It's about empathy and structure.
Exactly. And Emma and Jack wrap up their material with a deeply validating point. The mere fact that you take the time to put yourself in these simulated high-pressure situations, the fact that you're willing to embrace that discomfort, means you are serious about growing.
Yeah.
And that intentionality is everything.
It truly is. And honestly, analyzing all of these psychological mechanisms raises an important, perhaps slightly uncomfortable question for you to mull over as you go about your day.
Oh, let's hear it.
We have been dissecting this script entirely through the lens of a test designed for an English learner. But I want you to take a step back and think about your own daily life. Think about your native-speaking friends, your longtime colleagues, maybe even your own family members.
Yeah.
How many native speakers do you interact with who regularly deliver completely unstructured, rambling complaints that force you to carry their emotional cognitive load?
More than I'd like to admit.
How many of them aggressively blame service workers for minor mistakes because they completely lack basic de-escalation skills? Or how many of them end conversations with a painfully awkward, abrupt, "Okay, bye"?
That's a very fair point.
The fascinating, undeniable truth we've uncovered today is that mastering these 5 basic pragmatic situations might just make you a significantly better, more empathetic communicator than the vast majority of native speakers out there.
Wow, that is a brilliant thought to leave off on. Communicating is so much more than just knowing the words. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today, and we'll catch you next time.